Today we're going to be diving a little bit further into municipal government. Last time we talked about the levels of government in our federalist system, the federal, state, and local governments. Now we're going to dive a little bit more into the local government, specifically municipal government and how it works. So behind me we have an inverted triangle, and I'm going to use it to help explain municipal government and how it operates and functions. So you'll notice at the top of the pyramid we have the citizens, which is all of you. Citizens play an important role in a democratic system because citizens have a couple of responsibilities associated with their role in a democracy. The first of these is to elect a governing body. So you get to go to the ballot booth and you get to select who you think should serve on the governing body. Now, in the city of El Dorado's case, the governing body is called a city commission. Now, to talk a little bit about the city commission and how it functions, the city commission in El Dorado is comprised of 5 individuals. We have the mayor, and we have 4 city commissioners. All 5 of the individuals on the city commission are elected at large, meaning as a citizen of El Dorado, you get a vote for every seat on the city commission. This is important because in some communities, you only get a vote for the representative that is representing your district or your neighborhood, and usually the mayor. But in El Dorado's case, we don't have that. What we have is a system that allows you to vote on every seat on the city commission. So that means you get a vote for all 5 of the people that serve on the city commission. Now, how that works is the mayor is up for election every 2 years. Each city commissioner seat is up for election every 4 years on a rotating basis, meaning that every 2 years, 2 city commissioners are up for election with the mayor, and then 2 years later, the other 2 city commission members are up for election with the mayor. So every 2 years, you get a vote for 3 positions on the city commission, the mayor and 2 at-large city commissioners. Now, as I mentioned in the prior video, the mayor doesn't really have any other standing or authority except that the mayor is the chair of the governing body. That means the mayor opens and closes the meetings, presides over the meetings, and keeps the meetings in order. But the mayor's vote is only 1 vote, and the mayor does not have veto authority within our form of government. So in essence, the mayor is just like any of the other city commissioners. The other 4 city commissioners, they too get a vote and can make motions and can vote on those motions and take action just as any other elected official in the city. So that in essence is the city commission. Now, the city commission's role is to develop policies and to enact ordinances and regulations that they see fit for the betterment of the community. One of the other important functions of the city commission is to hire and supervise the city manager. So that's the next tier in our inverted triangle. Now, the city manager is actually the city commission's only employee. The other 125 employees of the city do not report to the governing body. That's important to note because a lot of people believe that the city commission has the ability to tell city employees what to do. And in fact, that's not how the form of government works. The form of government operates in that the governing body enacts policies and ordinances and rules, and the city manager is then charged with enforcing and enacting those policies and ordinances. And the city manager does that through city staff. So the governing body is responsible for hiring and supervising the city manager. They will go often through a strategic planning process or some type of priority setting process that provides direction to the city manager. Then the city manager takes that to city staff and oversees projects, initiatives, city operations to ensure that those operations and projects and initiatives implement the governing body's policies and prioritization and direction. And so in the city staff category here, we have all the city departments, the administration department, fire department, police department, utilities department, parks and rec department, utilities department, engineering department, and public works department. And each of those departments and their employees have a wide variety of work assignments that they do in performing those tasks. And those tasks then ultimately are intended to enact the direction that the city commission has informed the city manager that they want the city to go in. The city commission is also responsible for adopting an annual budget, and that budget is important because it assigns resources in the form of monetary resources as well as personnel resources to the priorities of the city, which are then utilized by city departments to implement those priorities. So again, that's in the performance of work, whether that's street maintenance, making sure our parks are in good order, or making sure that we implement that new initiative in the police department to keep our streets and our communities safe. Whatever that is that the city commission has prioritized and allocated resources to, staff moves forward and does. So the performance of work, that gets reported back up to the city manager. The city manager advises the city commission on policy changes or regulatory changes that are necessary to make their priorities or reality. So in some cases, it may mean that we have to change, for example, the municipal code or the zoning regulations, or maybe even a policy was enacted several years ago that may not necessarily allow for the commission's priorities to be enacted the way that the city commission desires. So sometimes change is necessary in order to make that happen. And of course, all of that work gets done, and the city manager reports it back up to the governing body, who then reports it back to the citizens, who then get to do the whole thing all over again by electing governing body members that they see fit to serve in their office and carry the community's priorities forward. So now I want to talk very briefly about the concepts of power and authority in the municipal government system, particularly in the case of the city of El Dorado and a city manager form of government. The city commission, or the governing body, exercises power over the municipal government, meaning that whatever direction the governing body wants the municipal government to go, the city commission has the power to direct the municipal government to go that direction. They delegate authority to the city manager. This is important because by state law, city managers have certain authorities and governing bodies have certain authorities statutorily. And as I mentioned before, the city manager is the only employee of the governing body. So the governing body does not have authority over the municipal government, so to speak, especially as it relates to municipal departments and the actions and activities of those departments. But what the governing body does have is the power to tell the city manager what they want done within the community. Whether that be, we'd like to change a specific service, we'd like to reorganize a department, or we'd like to modify the amount of money that a certain department gets and reallocate it to a different department, or we would like to discontinue doing a certain service and we'd like to do a new type of service. So the governing body has the power to dictate where the municipal government is going to go as an organization. And as I mentioned, they delegate the authority, and state law also breaks that apart and gives the city manager the authority then to oversee and manage the city staff to make sure that that happens. Now you might answer, so what? Like, what's the importance of this? Back in the early 1900s, corruption was rampant in municipal governments, particularly in large cities like Chicago and many large cities in the United States. And in fact, business leaders of these communities were becoming very disgruntled by the way that local politics was administering city services. Now, back in those days, there were no city managers. In fact, there were just strong mayors and their elected city councils or city commissions. So what was happening in these bigger cities was mayors, strong mayors, were basically dictating how city services were going to be administered throughout the community. Now you might say, well, so what? What's wrong with that? Well, what was happening in these big cities was it came down to who knew the mayor and how much money they contributed to the mayor's political campaigns. And in fact, in a lot of these communities, political patronage was the way of business, meaning that if you agreed to vote for the mayor or you contributed to his or her political campaign, you oftentimes got better services than folks on the other side of town that didn't contribute or that couldn't afford to. And not only that, but you also might have gotten jobs within the city government, or maybe your family or friends got jobs in the city government as well. So the city ran a very corrupt system. And that's just the way business was done for a really long time. If you had a pothole in your street, it didn't really get filled unless you, in essence, paid to get it filled, either in the form of votes or in the form of an actual contribution to the mayor's political campaign. So as you can imagine, this system was very ineffective, at least very inefficient to say the least. Tax-paying dollars would go to a whole bunch of random things, and cities were not very well ran during those days. In fact, police departments would respond to parts of town that contributed more to political campaigns. Fire departments wouldn't even put out fires in certain parts of the neighborhoods for these very reasons. You can imagine that it was quite a mess. So again, about the 1920s, some folks in some pretty progressive communities, most notably business leaders, decided that they'd had enough and that this form of government was not addressing their city needs as well as it should have. They looked at an actual business model as a better way of managing cities and thought that it could actually be a model for the entire country. And so they enacted what is now known as the city manager form of government, which is actually the system that we use right here in El Dorado. This system of government is intended to look very closely like a corporation works. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at our inverted triangle again and kind of talk about what this looks like in practice. So at the top of the pyramid, we have citizens. Now, if we kind of shift that a little bit and think of citizens as shareholders of a corporation, think of them as shareholders of municipal government incorporated. So being a citizen, you have the ability to vote on the governing body, or in the corporate world, the board of directors. Now, interestingly enough, in a corporate world, today, if you were a shareholder of a major corporation, you get a vote for the board of directors. So you get to exercise your votes, you get to vote your shares, and you get to select the board of directors. So the board of directors' responsibility in a corporate world is to represent the interests of the shareholders. In other words, to make sure that the corporation that the shareholders own is actually doing what it's supposed to do for the benefit of the shareholders. This sounds very familiar because the governing body is representing the citizens to make sure that the city, the municipal government, does what it's supposed to be doing for the benefit of the citizens. Very similar. So citizens, in the form of shareholders, vote their shares or elect a board of directors, which is the governing body, who then hire a city manager, which is very representative of a CEO in a corporate world. So the CEO helps the board of directors determine the direction and then make sure that that direction is implemented by city staff or by the corporation itself. So as you can see, if we apply the corporate world to our municipal model, we see a lot of similarities, and that's exactly what the progressive community in the 1920s wanted to see as part of their reform movement. So they came up with this system and decided to enact it, and by doing so, they made the governing body all a body of equal votes. Basically, they took power away from the mayor and gave it to the entire governing body. So again, going back to the conversation about power and authority, back before the reform movement, only one person, the strong mayor, had power. The mayor could determine the direction that the city was going to go. The mayor could determine the priorities of the city, And the elected body really didn't have a whole lot of say in that, except for a few ways they could check the budget, or they could make certain changes in that regard. However, now in the corporate model, the city manager form of model, the mayor does not have all the power. The power is distributed equally across the governing body, who then hires the CEO, the city manager, and they delegate that authority to make sure that city services are equitably allocated throughout the entire community. So if you have a pothole, it doesn't matter how much money you contribute to the mayor's campaign, or even if you contribute at all, the pothole will be filled so long as it's aligned with other city priorities that are out there. Same with law enforcement. If you call the police department, you're going to get a cop at your front door, no matter where you live, no matter how much taxes you pay, or whether you contribute to a political campaign or not. Those things are irrelevant. We look at each citizen equally. And that's really the point of the reform movement of the 1920s, and really the reason why our municipal government is structured the way it's structured. That, in essence, is a real brief overview of municipal government incorporated, or just the municipal form of government that we have, which is the city manager form of government. Before we wrap up, I'd like to throw in one quick footnote that you may not know. The city of El Dorado, Kansas was actually the first city in Kansas to implement the city manager form of government. That's right, we beat out the city of Wichita. They actually don't believe that, but our documents show that we were the first one to implement the city manager form of government. So we are an innovative city right here in Kansas as the first city manager form of government, implementing this progressive idea in Kansas. And now many cities in Kansas have this idea because it serves our residents in Kansas and throughout our various communities in a very well ran and efficient manner of government. So with that, I'm going to close session 2, and next time we'll be talking a little bit more about the departments and all of the services that the city provides.